Welcome to the Agency Ascend, the podcast dedicated to helping independent agencies grow, scale, and thrive in today's evolving insurance landscape. I'm your host today, Chris Sterlacci, Managing Partner of Comerica Agency Alliance, and joining me today as our moderator is my colleague Jessica McBurney. Welcome, Jessica. She is our Regional Vice President for Comerica Agency Alliance, and it's great to have you.
Thanks, Chris. I'm excited for today's conversation. Our guest brings a unique perspective from the marketplace because we've had a relationship with him for a long time, and he's coming to us with a lot of really awesome information today.
Yeah, absolutely. Today we're speaking with Sean Munger, former carrier representative, who's now a regional VP for our insurance network. He'll be sharing his journey from the carrier side to the network side, how the industry is shifting, and where independent agents can find new growth opportunities. Welcome aboard, Sean.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
Jessica, do you want to start off with the conversation?
Yeah. So, Sean, welcome not just to the podcast, but to our team here at Comerica Agency Alliance. We're super excited to have you. Obviously, we've known you in a different capacity. I've known you over a different capacity for the past few months, and it's been a pleasure getting to work with you. But I'm super excited to work with you in the trenches now in the regional vice president role. Do you want to give us a little bit on your background?
Yeah, definitely worked with the network for a number of years on the carrier side, but over 10 years with the carrier side, different roles, whether it be marketing rep, territory director, underwriting, all the above.
I think you also had high net worth.
High net worth underwriting as well. Started actually in high net worth, which was an interesting position to start in, and then seeing the nuances of that arm of the industry, but then transitioning over to the territory rep from underwriting, where definitely would not have been successful in my role as the territory rep without the underwriting background.
Yeah, would you say starting off in the underwriting, did that really set you up for a better success long term, or?
For sure. Understanding products, background, understanding appetite, understanding manuals, rating manuals, all the things that go into underwriting, definitely gave the foundation. Transitioning over to the marketing rep role, the joke always goes that transitioning from underwriting to marketing rep was you got tired of saying no all the time. And then that's why everybody wants to become the marketing rep. But then we see what happened with the challenging market where marketing reps have to say no even more.
That's what I was going to say. I was like, so if you transition from underwriting to marketing rep to stop saying no, is that what prompted you to transition from the carrier side? Is because you got tired of saying no again, or what?
No.
Really pushed that transition?
Definitely with the ever-changing market, challenges in the industry, the carrier side was a great place for me for 10 years. But ultimately, future endeavors have popped up, and wanting to jump onto the agency side is really where I see my expertise being invaluable, whether it be working with existing members to the network or working with others outside of the network, seeing the benefits of our network.
And you would say that there's a couple, because you were an external carrier rep, right, that went out and visited with agencies versus like an internal sales manager. How would you say that those relationships differ, and what do you see as kind of the how it's being handled amongst member agencies or any independent agency that's out there? And then just to clarify, you've been on the independent side this whole time.
Correct. Okay. Been with the independent side, no captive expertise or anything, but definitely to Chris's point, there is a difference in the in-person visits as opposed to your virtual. All carriers have what they call inside sales, I guess. We'll refer to it as that, which is done from a virtual standpoint, good or bad. Each carrier has their reasons to do it. I mean, I was doing it during COVID from a virtual standpoint, where every single one of my meetings was done virtually, which was not what I wanted to be doing. I wanted to be out visiting with my agents in person. I do feel when you're sitting across a desk from an agency, the rapport is just so much stronger. It's more skin in the game. I think the agency feels that. There's also, from a carrier aspect of it, it's harder for that agency to say no when they're sitting across the desk from you.
Well, I mean, in a lot of ways, you can break bread with them. There's a lot of synergies that can be brought up when you're physically. And Jessica, I mean, same thing for you on the captive side. You were captive, going out, talking to agencies. Did y'all have an internal sales versus external, or was it a different landscape?
I mean, we had a much smaller team, right, when it came to interfacing our agents, but we did have somebody that I would say is kind of was the office support that didn't go into the field as much. But to your point, Sean, I think having the field representation, getting to sit across the table from somebody, I think we talk about it now just going into 2025 as really so many industries push going back in person. It's just a different relationship that you build. And I think everybody can see the value in being able to talk to somebody face to face and grow that. You get so much more.
Isn't it a size thing? Like if you're of a certain size, you'd be on the internal sales track.
That's one piece of it.
Yeah.
There's a number of metrics, and each carrier does it differently from my understanding. It's not, size is not the only thing that goes into determination when it comes to that. Some of it has become preferenced by the agency itself, where maybe they're not in the office like they used to be pre-COVID. Maybe they've downsized office space, more virtual employees. And so obviously from a carrier standpoint, from a resources, they're not going to send that rep out there to visit with them when nobody's there.
Basically showing up, knocking on the door, and it's like, this office closed a while ago. Yeah, that's not always a good indication.
Never here. Yeah.
You're exactly right.
Well, even if you go back in our relationship, we had an agent, I think, that he set up his shop inside it was a grocery store. I mean, can you do that? Yeah, it's just when we look at having a professional environment, working with some of the contracts and the relationships that we have, you want to put a significant foot forward and meeting with that individual, even if it's at a coffee shop. So.
Yeah. Well, and even going back to my days on the carrier side, coffee shops weren't necessarily the most
conducive.
Yeah, exactly. To meet. I mean, Starbucks can be very loud.
Not very private.
When you're working there. And so.
Even if you're covering client data, like you don't. Yeah,
a lot of things, proprietary information. I mean, agency owners, it's hard enough getting them to share the core details of their business if you're one-on-one and you have a good relationship, but put them in a, public environment, you're adding more variables that aren't inherently working in your favor. But, what I'd be interested to hear too, Sean, from your perspective is you've seen so much on the carrier side. You worked through COVID. So, you alluded to seeing a lot of that transition in our virtual environment. What kind of marketplace trends do you think we're going to see going into 2025 and beyond when it comes to agencies and DFW?
Yeah. One piece I do want to just touch on real quick. As we were going through the tough market, agencies were more receptive to their reps being out in front of them, sharing the information they were receiving, not only from the carrier they work for, but other agencies in the marketplace. It is, as we all know, such a tight-knit community where one best practice working with one agency could definitely help another agency. And so I will say, as we were still navigating the challenging market that is out there, the meetings were much easier to be scheduled. Agencies were wanting to meet with carrier reps. They wanted to know what was happening. They wanted to hear, what's my neighbor doing down the street? And so that was at times a challenge because that was steering the conversation away from that to drive business, but at the same time trying to help them where I could. And I do feel like I will miss that piece of it, helping on the carrier side, but in this new role, helping agents understand what we offer on our side of the house is definitely a focal point.
Yeah, obviously the network has its own nuances and offerings and things like that. What would you say were some of the big items, even on the carrier side, that you can talk to prospects or agents till you're blue in the face talking about all these resources, but getting them actively engaging with it is part of that battle.
Exactly.
So what were some of the big things in your past that you saw were phenomenal initiatives that most carriers would be able to offer?
From the carrier standpoint of what additional offerings, definitely ease of use when you're looking at whatever's out there, whether it be your rating system, whether it be your access to underwriting, access to service, claims. And so incorporating kind of, Jessica, to what you were saying, what do I think is the next big thing? And it's not anything new. It's going to continue to be digital. Digital moving forward. And digital is an all-encompassing term. It could,
Yeah, it could be AI integration.
Exactly.
It could be transition to back-end systems to Salesforce, CRM databases. Yeah, it's
Your tech is going to define you, essentially.
Tech would be a better probably term instead of digital. But that's where I see agencies that are embracing tech/digital are going to be the agencies that continue to thrive in the challenging marketplace and come out much quicker of the challenges that some of their counterparts that are not buying into those features. And any carrier that is offering assistance in that, whether it be AI integration, ease of download use, all aspects of digital is going to come out ahead with those agencies as well on the carrier side. And
the agency of the future.
Exactly. I mean, it's a lot about capturing the data to be able to leverage that to get more pinpointed to help customers ensure their actual use versus, general pools, which can either help or hurt you, right? In most cases.
Yeah. And to your point, making it easier for them as well.
So with those changes, what would you say on the end? Now, switching back to the independent side, what would you say should be the main focus for an independent agency owner? Is it to connect with the reps? Is it to start utilizing it if they haven't? What would you say are some of the quick takeaways that you think that they need to go ahead and start doing?
Yeah. I'll give a shameless plug to other reps out there. Listen to your rep. They're just doing their job. I know they sometimes seem like they're asking for a lot, but there's a reason behind it. They're not trying to be difficult. The more you help your rep, the more successful they're going to be in their role, which is going to want them to work with you even further. So shameless plug there on that piece of it. But
I've gone as far as say, well, okay, to the rep. What's your growth goals? What are your production goals? And selfishly, I've tried to be like, I want to be 100% of that goal. So tell me exactly what it is so I can push it.
But kind of taking that a step further, where working in synergy is definitely going to help all parties involved when you're trying to get to your profitability, because that's still name of the game, profit. I do think that moving forward, you're going to need to embrace all aspects of what the carrier is asking you to do. And there's a fine line there on that end.
Well, Sean, what if my carrier's a jerk? You've got to be able to play that,
Do you want to write with that carrier?
Yeah. Well, ideally, yes, because our industry is so small that you don't want to burn any bridges at the same time. If it's difficult, then try to push to know exactly what those initiatives are, have those documented so that way you can push forward. And when you're doing that, you'll see that opponent become a partner. And somebody's like, oh, hey, they're trying to help us.
That was really good. I think we need to re-say that for a second. Wait, you'll see that opponent become a partner. That was powerful. And
I'll get a shirt made of it.
I like it. We'll wear it in our carrier meetings, actually. We'll turn our opponent into a partner. One of the things that strikes me in that is that you have this super interesting perspective and tactical knowledge, Sean, of being a carrier rep, working with agency owners, but you also work with networks too, right? In different relationships. So I guess my question and following up from that is, and your point as well, Chris, is how does an agent effectively work with their carrier partner and their network? How do they leverage the different opportunities that there are available when they have a network that's also helping be a carrier liaison, so to speak? What does that look like?
Well, I think that most networks are in it to help the carrier as well. Everybody in it together is going to make everybody more successful. And I don't think any network is out there trying to go against their carriers by any means.
That would be problematic for sure.
That would be opponent versus opponent.
And it's just, you're going to put yourself in a difficult position. And I know, kind of going back to what I just said, it's the independent channel. You have options, you have avenues, you have different carriers you can work with. Which is the beauty of the independent channel. And that's what makes it so exciting to work on this side. Yeah. And all the numbers show how that independent channel continues to grow year after year from market share and total body count of the insurance industry.
Right.
But to your question, working together, like mentioned earlier, is still your best avenue moving forward. There's a reason carriers are doing what they're doing. They want to be around long term. They don't want to be here for a minute, gone the next minute per se. But it's a unique market right now, given the challenges that we're seeing, whether it be.
If I could add for our listeners, obviously we're talking about the Texas marketplace, whereas each territory is going to be different and how they're navigating through those challenges. We've had I don't know how many 100-year storms in the last handful of years, which has made our marketplace very unique.
No, you're exactly right. And you can look at any of the carrier data. They're seeing the cat exposures elevated countrywide. So just because we're domiciled here in Texas, we think we have it bad, but there's other parts of the country.
Be in California right now. I mean, that's an unfortunate situation, but that will have impacts even on our local side here.
Yeah, absolutely.
No, you're exactly right. And kind of going back to that cat exposure countrywide, that is hitting parts of the country that it doesn't normally hit, or it hits. You have that hailstorm that hits in history would be once every 15 years, where they're getting that hailstorm every other year now. Just weather trends continue to change. Population continues to grow. What used to be empty farmland, forest, is now housing divisions.
Everywhere. Houses everywhere.
Good and bad.
Because of all the people coming from different places.
Oh, yeah. Well, I remember when we were talking back on your carrier days, we were like, what was it? Prosper, for example, here was all farmland. And we decided to
There's still some cows up there.
There's some, right? But we decided to, let's build a housing community out there and put a 5.5 acre lagoon, which, by the way, is super awesome. But now it's pummeled by hail like every year. And you're just like, okay, we didn't really survey that before.
We're rebuilding the lagoon.
every year.
The fish are getting their own hailstorm every year.
Yeah. Just like any industry, the insurance industry is going to adapt. It just takes a little bit more time with the insurance industry. And I foresee the challenging market coming to an end here very soon. I think the light at the end of the tunnel is becoming larger when we're looking at the challenges of the market, whether it be auto, homeowners, commercial, all the above. You're seeing similar challenges across each line of business that are all very much overlapping when it comes to weather.
Well, and we're seeing that with a few of the other carrier partners that are now open for home and auto. We've got
new products,
3 new carriers. Well, they're not new carriers. They've been around, but they're now opening back up, which will relieve some of that pressure that we've been having. I mean, we had one that was just started their pilot program in March. And then we had another one that's looking in April of opening back up. So and all of them are saying they want growth, but, you want to be cognizant of what type of growth. You don't just want to go out there and write a bunch of monoline home or shove it that way. So
that brings up a good point. Both of you mentioned that there's different variables showing that things are starting to open back up compared to the difficult market that we've been in. Sean, what do you think it's going to take for independent agents to stay competitive and grow at the rate that they want to in the next couple of years? Because the changes that a lot of the carriers have made, they're not going anywhere. Just because we start wanting to have business again, there's still big changes, right? Deductibles are changing. How you get compensated for your roof is probably going to massively continue to change. What do you think that means for agents and growing?
A couple of things. I know one piece of it being is bundling. And I'm not talking just personal lines. We're hearing it from commercial as well. They're wanting bundled accounts, whether it be your BOP, all lines rolled
can you
up
add
to
an
one.
Umbrella? Can you? Yeah. What other things can you add to that?
That's one piece of it. I think consumer education is a big piece as well. And I know a lot of carriers are working hand in hand with the distribution channel, which agencies, to make material available for customers. And I think that customer is becoming more aware of insurance, given the cost of it. I mean, we live in Texas. We have massive premiums for a reason. And when your roof is getting pelted every other year and your deductible is now 2%, you want to understand, well, do I need to replace my roof? Can I patch my roof? Can I fix just this one part? Along with these smaller claims that are right over that deductible limit, maybe I shouldn't file that claim. Maybe it should come out of pocket. Maybe I should have more of a emergency fund built up to handle some of this stuff, because insurance is not a home warranty service. It is for the catastrophe, massive, massive loss to get you back where you were, the principle of insurance. And I think that's where the consumer, from an education standpoint, is definitely understanding more. But at the same time, with higher premiums, there's an expectation from the consumer side to the carrier. Hey, I expect more out of that carrier. I'm paying this much.
Yeah.
I need to see my return on investment, essentially. And I know carriers are working on their side as well to help that customer when it comes to expectations.
Does that fall on the agent as well, though, to level up in, let's call it service, or how they're delivering and what they're delivering to the consumer, because the consumer is looking more intently?
To a degree, I think it does. It's not solely on the agent to provide that information. The consumer needs to be doing some self-research as well. And then also from a carrier standpoint, they need to be getting that information to consumers, bypassing the agency channel, because there is only so much an agent can do in a day. We all know. Crazy what agents do in a day. But that is where more education that's out there is only going to help the industry. And I do see more and more of that available. And just consumer knowledge is up as well in the insurance space, I would say.
Yeah, I think for a lot of us on the independent channel, it's like, how do you best partner with your clientele to educate them and mentor them? I mean, we've talked about in the past, even on our commercial side, we have certified risk managers that will tackle a prospect very differently to basically set that conversation up on the get-go. So they'll say, hey, you're an entrepreneur. This is more on the commercial side, obviously, but they'll go to an entrepreneur and says, hey, you're an entrepreneur. You're very risk tolerant. Do your policies reflect your risk tolerance? And they're like, wait, what do you mean? It's like, well, we understand that, you are looking to insure certain risks from catastrophic events. For some of these guys, it's not the first million. It's the second, third, fourth million that they're more concerned about. So it's like, okay, if you'll be willing to take on some of that risk internally, which then goes into the conversation of how they can do loss prevention, what they can do to alleviate that, which favors the carriers as well as the client, then they're willing to take on more of that risk internally and then pass the rest up for what insurance was intended to do in the first place, which was catastrophic events, total losses. Same thing when I'm looking at the personal lines level. I had a roofer come out and he says, I can replace your roof. And I'm, now sitting there going like, okay, I have an 8 and a 9 year roof. And I said, okay, well, how much does it cost to patch that one leak? He's like $900. I said, let's do that option. That way I didn't have to file a claim, got my roof patched. I personally, I guess I'm not like everybody else. I didn't mind that the shingles were slightly discolored. I got my leak fixed and I was happy. And I didn't have to deal with replacing the whole roof. But just understanding that, I'm going to look a little bit more favorable by some of the carriers because they're just like, hey, this guy's going to take care of this stuff.
What is this really for? What is this insurance policy really here to operate for? And you made a good point, Sean. It's not a home warranty. It's in the event of a catastrophe, not one roof shingle, y'all.
No, it's not benefits where you're supposed to send in your EOI and get everything documented and you get it's not that.
Yeah. And it's forced change now, right? With premiums increasing and product changing, it's going to force changes. But, one of the things that interests me, Sean, is you've had a lot of relationships, obviously, in the industry that we've displayed. But why did you decide to join Comerica specifically? Not just the agency side, but Comerica.
You're fishing for sound bites, aren't you?
I'm fishing for his true perspective, Chris. Because let's be real, Sean had his options, right? Like, I know he likes you, probably, but I don't think you were the whole reason.
90%.
All right, I'm going to get out of here.
No, making this switch from the carrier side to, we'll call it the agent side, is something I've been looking at for some time. And it not just, like you said, not just going anywhere. I see the benefit of the network. The network model, we'll call it that. I see the benefit of that. I see the benefit that I can bring to that network model from expertise on the carrier side, but then also helping these agency owners run their small business. Because that's what it is. It is a small business. They're the business owner at the end of the day. And ways to help them improve bottom line, improve efficiency, and at the same time, maximizing potential dollar amounts is one thing I feel I can excel at in this role. And there's a lot of stigma, a lot of misinformation about networks. all networks are different. All networks operate way differently. There's not one that is same. Coming from the carrier side, I had a little bit more behind the peak of the curtain, we'll call it, of what networks look like, clusters, aggregators, MGAs, all the above. And I can tell you not one is run even remotely the same way.
Interesting.
From a ownership standpoint, from a compensation standpoint, from a contractual standpoint, all the above is just so different. And that is where there's so much misconception out there.
What are some of those big differences?
Oh, I think, if I could add, I think he was probably sitting over there and I was like, I could totally do this better than what they're doing. and that's just like, no, I got to go help. I'm kidding.
The foundation's already here. And if the foundation wasn't here, that wouldn't, I definitely would not have come over. The foundation's very solid with the network and
constantly improving though.
Yes. A lot of reinvestment, which you don't see from other networks, other aggregators, that reinvesting dollars back into the organization instead of just pocketing it at a high level is definitely, that's one aspect that's completely different than some others out there. And every network has their, I guess, best practices, go-tos of what they do better than their competitors. And there's not a one-size-fits-all
absolutely
model either. So I can tell you that, going back to what I said, just so different. And we could spend 3 hours here talking about the differences about networks and everything. But going back, it's kind of like, don't have your guard up when you're wanting to understand what a network does, what all the benefits are to a network.
Yeah.
Just because you hear the word network, aggregator, MGA, doesn't mean you should shut down immediately and think the worst, because that's not the case. There's
Each
so
one
many
of them's different flavor, different skill sets.
Mm-hmm.
Gelato versus
Ice
dairy
cream.
base. Yeah, it's all dairy.
I was like strawberry, chocolate, vanilla, and he's like gelato versus it's the Italian coming out there.
Well, and like even the life cycle of the agency could determine what network aggregator
That's
works
a
best for you.
fantastic point,
So-
I think, Sean. And that was actually another thing that I was going to bring up. And I know you're going down this road, but I'd just like to dive a bit deeper for a second. You've gotten to work with agencies of all sizes. You've worked with the biggest of the big, and you've worked with the startups in a lot of ways. And you can see some of the defining factors that equate to success in those businesses and what those factors are. So I have a kind of a two-part question, if I can. The first one is, what are some of the pieces that you see as success that no matter what, they have these things are going to have some success? And the second thing is diving deeper into what you just said, which is at a different stage of agency life cycle means a different network partnership could make sense. Could you expand on those?
Yeah. I will say the one underlying attribute that I see from any successful agency is they are there to help the customer. Number one, we are an insurance. It is usually somebody's worst day is when they're contacting you about their house burning down, they were in a massive wreck. And so that is the number one attribute I still see for successful agencies. They are there to help their customers before anything else. And I will say, along with wanting to help their customers, also wanting to grow, but grow successfully, which is could be an all-encompassing term, whether that is a perpetuation plan for you passing down your agency to somebody else, or whether that is growing to help educate the new workforce coming in to the insurance industry, which is, as we all know, there's very different tiers of it, we'll call it age in the insurance industry. But tenure, there you go. That's much better. Those are definitely some of the most successful underlying pieces I've seen. But then also going back to what we said, partnering with your carriers, because the more successful the carrier is, the more successful your agency is going to be. We all know that. And so those are the last piece I'll add to that is just always able to adapt and change on the fly, because as we know, this industry is always ever changing, and being stuck in your ways is going to mean you're left behind when everybody else is moving in a different direction. So
Well said.
What was the second part of your question?
Yeah, that's what I was going to ask.
Yeah, I hit you with two at once, so that wasn't fair. The second part of my question was, in talking about the different life cycles of agencies, you alluded to, depending on where an agency is at, that could constitute the type of network partnership that they need. So
For sure.
what are some of those things that would define a certain type of partnership?
Yeah, I mean, definitely you have, we'll call it your startups, where they are starting their own agency.
Yeah, what are we talking about? 0 years experience? We talking about
Hey, what's a
5
startup,
years?
Sean?
Well, that's what I was going to break. I was going to break it down into sub-startup.
Oh,
You could have your startup where they are a producer leaving, starting their own agency. Whether they're able to bring their book with them or not is a component. You have what could still be considered a startup, but somebody that is leaving the captive channel, moving over to the independent channel. Obviously, they can't bring that book with them to the independent channel for a number of reasons. So that could be looked at as a scratch agency. You have your agencies that are either splitting because of different ownership changes, things like that. And so one agency one day could be, I don't know, we'll call golden premium amounts here, $20 million in premium. And then the next day they split and this owner took $5 million, the other took 15. So looked at very differently.
Right.
Also, when you're looking at M&As, mergers and acquisitions, agencies can grow significantly overnight from an M&A standpoint, which is another thing to look at. So that's kind of on the scratch side of how I would view them.
If I could interrupt, I think one of the things that obviously we look at is what you were going back to your earlier point is tenure in the industry. If you got somebody who has less than 2 years experience, they would be better served either getting involved with an MGA model, getting involved with as a producer for an agency just to learn the industry. Because just starting off and say, hey, I want to sell insurance, are you really adding value to the clients that you're selling insurance for? And unless you know that.
Probably not.
Well, in some cases you can be. It just depends on who you're aligned with.
Solid point. And and the work and investment you're willing to do.
Exactly.
True.
And that's a really big part of our, I think, conversations all the time is, are you ready for how much this is going to take to do it well?
But even larger agencies will have internship programs. Carriers will offer educational resources to help you bridge that gap sooner. But then it's all about the boots on the ground, going out there and actually proselytizing for that business. So that, I mean, I would say, if you're 0 to 2 years, once you've been in the industry for 2 years, I mean, the opportunities kind of really open up, and it just depends on what you're going for. I mean, we often sit down and say, okay, we want to know what your goals are, because if we can align your goals with what product offerings we have, we're going to help make that agent that much more successful. And if we determine through that cycle that they're not the right fit for our network or our organization, we're going to offer them to another group to say, hey, you need to go with these guys.
Or be honest about what it looks like. I mean, I think that's a lot of the conversations. I want to do insurance
part-time and, continue to do my flower business on the side. It might not be, well, I don't know. We insert any other.
Wish I could grow flowers. That's almost, honestly, I give gardeners big props. No green thumb over here. I've killed a lot of plants. My husband's like,
I have
stop buying
AstroTurf in my yard now because
Yeah. He's like, come on, Jessica, no more herbs this year. And I'm like, I just got to try that one more time. But so we talk about a little bit startups, but what about those other agencies of different sizes? I mean, I feel like we kind of have buckets, like the 1 to 5 million is a bucket. 5 to 10 is a bucket. The 10 plus is a different bucket almost. And then you have different ones within that. But what would you say in that 1 to 5 bucket, what does a network bring to those guys?
A number of things. 1 to 5 isn't what it used to be as we're looking at premium increases.
Very good point.
And just overall growth, especially where we're at. We're in one of the fastest growing areas of the country. So it doesn't take much for...
Yeah, that farmland. Whew.
Yeah.
Houses, right?
Even on the commercial side, just how much new construction goes on commercially is an opportunity for us as well. But back to your point, it's that 1 to 5 million bucket is not necessarily, I don't want to offend anybody here, but it's not what it used to be. And so that $1 to $5 million bucket could still be somebody very new in the industry.
Yeah, absolutely.
And we're talking premium.
That's what I'm talking.
Yeah,
premium.
I assumed she was talking premium.
So for
I don't know what
our
1 to 5.
listeners, it's anywhere from 100,000 in agency annualized revenue to $500,000 in an annual. That's just a general assessment, but
Yeah. And so obviously as you continue to grow and premium increases, revenue increases, there's different components that the network can step in and assist, not only from just, hey, I'm part of a network, it's great, but there are always markets coming. The networks also sometimes get first access to that. Not always. And
I mean, they talk about doing the pilot programs. Like they're going to us to say, hey, we want you to break this or test it out to see what issues you run into versus just, launching it into the independent space and saying, well, we'll figure out what we actually have. If there's a kink in that process, they'll find it out much quicker. And then that's again why we go back to our earlier point of partnering with the reps and helping them understand that. Just because the rate comes out and it's like $1,000 cheaper than everybody else in the marketplace, does that actually make sense, or is there an issue within that system?
Yeah, I think we've all seen that with some of the insurtechs that have come and gone very quickly. But going back to Chris's point, where you have the expertise at the network as well, not just on the network side, but other members of the network that have done similar things that maybe somebody new is looking to do. And I do feel like that is one great thing with the network is everybody's always open to share information. It's not
a wealth of information across the board.
I'm keeping this all to myself because they understand it's to benefit the network. It's only going to benefit myself.
It benefits the network, benefits me. But we learned long ago, like I can give you my playbook and how you apply it to your agency and what your goals are is going to be unique to you. Like I'm in a lot of the mastermind groups and we talk about your why, what's your vision for the organization, and not everyone's why or vision is the same. So there's so much more that goes into that. And if I can have what was the word I used? It's a co-opetition.
Co-opetition.
Yeah. I think that we talked about that the last time.
All the words.
Yeah, we're competing at the same time. There's so much business there. There's so much opportunity. And if I'm going to lose, I'd rather lose to somebody that I'm going to benefit from the growth in the network to that agent.
That's a great point. This has been some really good content, guys. I want to just stop and first of all say, Sean, welcome to the network.
Yeah.
Welcome.
We're so excited to have you. You're going to be bringing such a wealth of knowledge and industry experience to our agents on so many different levels. As we wrap things up, guys, one of the things that we love to ask our guests is what has been impactful on your professional journey? Can you share with us a quote, a book, or a podcast that has impacted you, Sean?
I'll go with the book. It's actually, Chris and I were speaking about this earlier. He came and spoke.
Military history.
Yeah. He came and spoke a couple years ago here locally. His name's Kenny Thomas. He is ex-Special Force.
That sounds like
country
that was cool.
music star.
Yeah, country music star now. But he came and spoke a couple years ago at a...
It was the IIAD event.
It was, yeah. I didn't know what to call it, I guess. It wasn't a convention, it was just a breakfast, essentially. And he spoke, and to this day, probably one of the best speakers I've ever attended. And being in this industry, we know speakers are all around us, and had my fair share of them. But he wrote a book as well, and I read his book after he spoke, and it's probably one of the best books I've ever read in my life as well. It's called "Get It On: What It Means to Lead the Way."
Ooh.
So let's get it on.
All right, that's pretty awesome. I love that. Thanks for sharing.
I will offer, it's called The Turning the Flywheel. It's actually an excerpt from Jim Collins' book, Good to Great. And essentially what it talks about is that success is not the result of a defining moment, but an actual being consistent. So discipline, decision, and actions compounded over time. I'm thinking of another quote. It's like, often people, and I forgot who was a credit to, maybe Thomas Jefferson or somebody, but essentially you'd be amazed at what you can accomplish over 10 years and not what you can accomplish with. No, I'm really messing that up. I'll stick to the Flywheel book from Jim Collins. I'm not going to try to do that quote, but this book is just a small sample size from Good to Great. I am reading another book, but I'm yet to offer it. I will probably bring it on to the next podcast.
Okay. We'll have time for that. Well, I'm going to give a tidbit on what I've been currently invested in, which is a podcast. It's called The Rest is Politics. It's actually got somebody from both parties that talk things out in a dense political environment that we have. It's been a really interesting podcast to see different sides of the coin. So try to challenge seeing all sides. So that's been really awesome lately.
That's awesome. Well, and to our listeners, thanks for tuning in. If you found today's episode valuable, be sure to subscribe to the Agents Ascend podcast and connect with us on LinkedIn. Until next time, keep growing and keep ascending.